Welcome everybody to Game Changers My Mind in Mind session. It's a bit of an off-the-cuff session that we're excited to hold, and we've got two very important people in this space with me today, and hopefully they'll do most of the talking as they're the experts. We've got Taela Davis, who, for those that don't know, is also my partner, but way more importantly than that, she is a mindset expert. She works with elite athletes around mindfulness training. She's also an elite athlete herself. She's also the founder of Mindfulness Matters. So very lucky to have Taela share her insights. She's also a school counsellor at a local school at Patterson River Secondary College. Also got a wonderful man there, Matty Runnalls, the founder of Mindful Oz, is an incredible person. He's ABC Trailblazer of the Year 2020. Like I said, the founder of Mindful Oz, and he just has probably spoken to tens of thousands of people around being mentally fit and just treating our mental health like we do our physical health as well. So very lucky to have him. He runs his own podcast. He does a lot of great work in this space. So just excited to shut up and listen to these two awesome people for the next little bit before Friday night footy kicks off. So, all right, guys, we'll get straight underway. Firstly, maybe starting with you, Tay. How are you coping with lockdown 2.0?
So far so good. I think for me the first lockdown was pretty good, and I kind of wrapped my head around how life was. And being pregnant, my life is completely different to how it normally is anyway. So there are a lot of benefits to being pregnant during lockdown. So far I'm not feeling worried about it. I'm actually feeling quite calm. I'm just a little bit worried I'm going to have my baby in full-on isolation lockdown.
Fair enough. How about you, Maddie?
I'm good, mate. I'm feeling really inspired and excited at the moment, which was the same way I felt when COVID first started. I liked the opportunity to pause. I guess for me now, it's about taking the learnings about how I wasn't sustainable with that inspiration and that excitement the whole way through last COVID. So there's a lot of emotions that got suppressed. So it's about trying to take the learnings from the first one into the second one and see if we can etch out a pretty important 6 weeks of productivity and good work and good health.
Yeah, awesome, mate. I tend to agree. Like, it's all good to be inspired and to work hard, but sometimes it's not sustainable. And I suppose today is all about the tips and tricks around that, because you've got to have good people around you, but you also need to be self-motivated for this weird time that we're living in. We're all about the same age. We haven't lived through something like this, so learning on the go, but utilising the tools in our kit bags. Is it okay, just on that, is it okay to be struggling, and is it normal to be not the best version of yourself right now? Maybe Maddie, you go for it, mate.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I think the first rule of COVID for anyone out there and listening is to give yourself permission to just be. I mean, we're in a time that we've never experienced it, and people will say that I'm a mind and behavioural health expert, but I mean, if I've just said then that I'm taking the learnings from the first one, it's something that we've never experienced. So first and foremost, give yourself permission to just be gentle during this time and to acknowledge the way you do feel, but to make sure that we action the way we feel. We don't want to get stuck in those thoughts and feelings, and we want to make sure that we're trying to always be our best version of ourselves.
Yeah, spot on. What about you, Tay?
I feel like Maddie and I are going to have a lot of very similar answers to these, because I just sat there smirking, being like, that's exactly what I was going to say. But yeah, I think just it's actually okay to not be looking forward to another lockdown. If you're in Melbourne, it's actually okay to not be looking forward to it, especially because we had that little taste of freedom and we were able to get out and do some normal things again. It is a bit disheartening to then kind of go backwards, and it's all right to be upset and not be stoked about it. I mean, even though I said last time there was some positives for me, I still wasn't excited about it. A big thing for me is not being able to go to the gym, and I got 2 weeks of being able to go to the gym and then back to not going back. So that was something I was really disappointed about. But as Maddie said, acknowledge how you feel, and that's okay, but don't sit with it too long, or just acknowledge that's something that we can't control and we can't change. So how am I going to adapt and get through it? As they say, adapt or die. So this is one of those situations. Instead of sitting there being miserable about something we can't control, we've got to think about how we make the best of the situation for ourselves.
Spot on. Yeah, I have a feeling both of your businesses have mindful in it, so I dare say it's very you're going to be very similar, which is awesome. If I've always been curious on this. Does what you say to yourself impact your own mental health, or even what you speak out? I know at the moment we're connecting via this, and it's something I don't really gravitate towards a lot. I like the face-to-face connection. However, what I see on social media is that the negativity that might be out there about the poor me mentality. Does that actually impact our mental health? Whether it be science or just your beliefs?
I'll let you go, Tay.
Thank you. 100%. Like, I think as individuals, we actually underplay how much our inner dialogue and the dialogue that we say to others actually impacts us. And it's probably from a subconscious level, so we don't always realize, but definitely if we're constantly thinking negative thoughts, that's just what's in our mind. We're not going to have room for being open to positive things, and we're less likely to spend time looking and searching for those positives that could be happening. And as Maddie said, yes, we're in lockdown, but it's a good time to think about other things you can achieve, which normally you don't have time for. And I just remember, actually, funny you say about social media and, the dialogue for social media. Once they had announced that we're going back into lockdown, I think it was like an hour later, I went on my Facebook and the whole feed was just negativity of everyone being so upset about going back into lockdown. And it made me feel really, down about it too. Whereas before I was kind of like, okay, round 2, here we go. What can I do this time? Last time I taught myself how to edit videos because it was something I always wanted to do and I never had time for. So I did that. But I felt like before I'd opened my social media, I was feeling okay. Like I wasn't stoked, but at a good level. And then after looking at my feed, I just felt so down and I had to kind of work on building myself back up again.
Yeah.
I think for me, a big one for me, and again, we're going to cover each other so well in this, but a big one for me is changing the dialogue from I got to I get to. Like, it's a big one for me lately of just, there's a lot of things that we have to do now that we're in this situation, but see it as a blessing and another opportunity to do things. And it's just another way of relaying what Tay's just said. But we got to rewire that dialogue and that narrative in our mind. And that's been so big for me from, we're missing out on sport, and for so long that's our positive outlet. So now it's about rewiring as to what is the new positive outlet to give full protection to something that's not there anymore. And that's how we build resilience, and that's how we build a platter of tools that enable us to get through any life's inevitable situation or challenge, is building that full protection, if you will, for the things that we don't have, because it might be an injury, it could be anything, but you've always got to have something there to replace it. And this is a great little experience for anyone in the world to equip themselves with a new skill set, to know that if something ever pops up like this again, or if something ever puts us in our home, whether it's injury or sickness again, that we've got a whole tool belt and range of things that we know that we can go to and pull out in those different times. So, we talked about social media, and as Australians are 7 times more likely to find a negative than a positive. So, I mean, social media is not a great place to start, but you just got to rewire that pattern in our brain and the neurons to say that that's not how I want to look at it, and that's not my dialogue. So it's addressing that and using a lot of positive affirmations for each situation, like I said. And a big one for me is from I've got to do something to I'm lucky that I get to do something. So that's just the way that I change my dialogue to be grateful for every situation that we've got. And I think there's plenty to be grateful for about this pause, even if it is the second one we're having.
Yeah, very good point. But yeah, like gratitude is so integral to our well-being, and looking at what you get to do, not what you got to do or you had to do. It's just shifting that whole mentality. It's a very good point. Are there any other signs other than the internal narrative or dialogue, like you two so well put it? Is there any other signs that you may, for a self check-in perhaps, that you look for that might be a sign that maybe you're not going as well as sort of warning signs before you get to a point where you're really struggling? Are there any other signs?
Is it my turn? Is it? Yeah, I think
Yep,
a
I'm
big
glad
one.
last time. Go for it.
A big one for me is just understanding all the thoughts that I'm experiencing. So am I experiencing more thoughts than I normally do? Is there an overwhelm? Is there a stress there? Is there frustration? Is there anger? Am I struggling to get out of bed? Am I eating poorly? These are all our ways. These are all our addictions to go back into a different place because we've got to substitute for something that's missing. So they're action signals that we've got to change. And that's okay. A million thoughts, that's a good indication that, okay, there's a bit going on in my life, but I've got a bit to action. So it's not a bad thing. It's just about understanding that those thoughts are there for a reason, and it's about grabbing them, understanding them, processing them, and dealing with them rather than letting them all build up. And that's what we do because we're so busy and so occupied all the time trying to keep ourselves from not being bored, when bored is a very, very beautiful thing. So it's about slowing down in the process. And I think if you're starting to see different signs within yourself, whether that's, like I said, thoughts, overwhelm, different eating patterns, stress, weight loss, even your ability to get up out of bed and to wear a different set of clothes every day. I know a lot of people are loving the PJ setup at the moment, but again, these things are, while they're good and they're comfy, they are processes that might put us back a few steps. And we don't want to build bad habits because you can't unlearn what you've learned. So we just got to prepare ourselves as if tomorrow we're going back out into the real world, and we just got to keep as much normality as we can. Yeah.
Awesome, mate. Tay?
Yeah, I think a big one for me for like signs and symptoms is you pretty much know yourself better than anyone else. So you know what your normal habits are, what your routine is like, and it's about being able to identify when that changes. So as Maddie said, whether it's, your eating patterns, whether you are just sitting there eating all the time or you're not eating enough, or all of a sudden you really struggle to sleep and normally you're a really good sleeper, they're all indications to you that, something's different and something's changing. And I think a really good way to be able to tell if things are different are, what do you know about yourself? Are you someone that's, pretty positive and most things don't bother you, and all of a sudden little things that would never normally bother you are just irritating you, or you're feeling like you're really short with people and things like that? Because that's a big one. I know that, like, if I'm feeling stressed or I'm not feeling great, like little things bother me more, and then I've got to sit there and go, hang on a minute, that's not normally an issue for me, or why am I getting so worked up over this when it's normally something I would just completely be like, that's totally fine. So yes, it's about really thinking about what you know about yourself and who you are normally when you're feeling good, and then noticing those changes and being honest about them. So as Maddie said, if you all of a sudden don't want to change your clothes and wear the same set of pajamas for a week, you're kind of going, okay, that's probably not how I would normally live my life. And being honest and going, okay, maybe I need to do a bit of a check-in or figure out what's going on for me right now.
And I think that that's really important too, because you've got to change your state. Changing your state is such a big thing for anything, your thoughts, feelings, and even the way you stand up tall or sit down or slouch. And these things that's our state and our emotion. And you change one, you change all three. So by changing your clothes, you're going to make yourself feel better. If you put your makeup on like you normally do, it's going to make yourself feel better. If these things are sticking to normality because they are what makes us happy normally, well, they're the sort of things that we've got to try and implement every day, and try and stick to as much structure as we possibly can, so that we are changing that state and dialogue in our head to not think of negativity, because we think of and associate COVID and staying home and restrictions with negativity. So it's about changing that dialogue within us to say, well, this isn't COVID. There is nothing going on outside in the world at the moment. I just get this opportunity at the moment to work from home. If there wasn't such thing as COVID, I bet half of us would take that opportunity to work from home anyway. So it's just about rewriting and shifting that narrative to go, this is just another day. That's why we don't fall back into the trap that of bad behaviors, I think.
Yeah, just on that, like, it's a little bit off topic, but what do you think about the news? Do you watch the news much, both of you? And for me personally, I find it a lot. I watch the project because it's a little bit more upbeat, but is watching the news sometimes gets you into a fear state? Just your thoughts on it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as we were talking about earlier, we're definitely influenced by the environment around us. So if we're watching the news and all it is doom and gloom and this bad thing and COVID this and, like I know sometimes you and I, Brad, we sit there watching the normal news for a change, and just we watch the headings that come up of crisis and meltdown and, epidemic or pandemic, whatever. And we both just like, wow, that was really heavy. And it just changes straight away how you feel. You kind of feel like you've been weighed down. So definitely, I think there's a fine line between being in the know and having knowledge and information, and then overconsumption to the point where it instills fear in you, and it just puts you in such a negative state that then, as Maddie said, your narrative for COVID and for lockdown is all negativity, and you can't spend the time thinking about, okay, what are going to be my positives from this experience? So what are some goals that I'm going to set for myself for things I would like to achieve? And it's not that you have to achieve them, it's things you'd like to do.
Yeah, spot on. As you were saying that, I just saw Maddie's beautiful dog in the background, and we put ours outside because they're so distracting. They're so beautiful.
She's normally pretty good. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I've removed the media from my socials. I've removed the media from my socials just to see and to test what that feels and looks like for me. And yeah, it's funny. I think if anything's really important in the world that you need to know about, I feel like you find it out regardless of having the news or not, but you just find it out in a much more positive way. You find it out in a more positive light. And I think that that's really important, because a lot of what comes to us from Channel 7, Channel 9 and all them, and I'm happy to say that because I don't think it's any secret to anyone, is just very, very negative stuff. And it's a wonder why that everyone's living in a state of fear and panic and overwhelm and stress, because that's what's relayed to us all the time. And, it's funny that that's what the media broadcasts to us, because the first way to weaken an immune system is fear, stress, and overwhelm. So it's a disgusting, really, cycle that's going on in the country at the moment.
Yeah, no, thanks.
And people wonder why people go out and like bulk buy toilet paper. It's because they've spent all this time taking information that's telling them to freak out, and then obviously the behaviors that come from that is we're going to go and clean out all the toilet paper in the supermarket when we all know. And like, it baffles me because we've already been through a lockdown, and we all know that we could still go to the supermarket, we could still buy groceries, get toilet paper, and yet we're going into another lockdown and people are starting to do the same thing again. So
yeah,
crazy.
I think it's really important. There's, I think don't worry about media in this situation, but I think it's really important that we understand what does weaken the immune system in a time like this. And, we wonder why we get sick, and we wonder why we're susceptible to these sorts of things, and that's because we're living in a state of fear, panic, stress, overwhelm, and all these sorts of things. And that's why these routines and that are very important to keep up, because they build that immune system within us. I mean, I know I talk about cold exposures and talk about meditation and that, and they've just come out now and said how meditation, yoga, and cold exposure is as good as a vaccine for COVID-19. So it's about doing these holistic practices to ensure that we are as strong as we can be for whatever situation comes about. And it's a beautiful thing that they've recognized that now.
Yeah, it sure is. One thing I've really struggled with, and that we're all probably extroverts to some extent, but I dare say I'm more extroverted than introverted. I've really struggled not being able to see my mates. Obviously, the outlet of sport, which you mentioned before, Matt, is what has been familiar for 20 odd years for all of us. But just not seeing my mates, I've really struggled with that. Have you guys got any tips around how to actually enjoy your own company? And, don't have to drink your own bathwater and think about how good you are and all this sort of stuff. But like, sitting in your own thoughts can be a scary thing for us at times. And especially if you feed off others and get energy from them, how do you give yourself energy to be motivated? Tay?
It's a good question, and it's funny because I used to hate my own company, and it's probably not something most people know about me as a person, but I used to really hate my own company, and I had to work really hard on changing changing that. And now I'm probably to the point where I actually really like my own company, and I'm happy to, you know, sit down, do my own thing and watch movies, things like that. But I think one thing you've got to learn to be able to do is get comfortable with the uncomfortable. So if you're not used to being by yourself, it's going to feel pretty uncomfortable. And it's about kind of pushing through that and knowing that, yeah, it's going to feel a bit weird and uncomfortable, but if I push through, then eventually it's going to feel better. And I suppose too, it's about, again, like that self-awareness of our thoughts. So if we don't want to spend time alone in our own company because we're worried about the thoughts we have, that's a pretty good indication right there that we need to change our thought patterns and how we're thinking about things, and trying to put a more positive lens on how we're looking at things. And I think the best way I can suggest people to getting good at liking their own company is to make that time a time that you enjoy. So doing things that you like. So whether, like for me, that's, I love watching movies. So me learning to like my own company is I sit down and watch a movie, I have a hot chocolate or a cup of tea, or I might do things that I enjoy or teach myself new skills. So making the most of that experience rather than it being I'm sitting alone in a room with no one else around me, because no one's gonna really enjoy that. And if you're an extrovert, that's probably your worst nightmare. So, you know, making that experience fun for yourself, again, not just thinking about, oh, I don't get to see my friends, oh, but I get to do a bit of self-care and look after myself and relax and teach myself some new things.
Awesome. What about you, Maddie?
Yeah, one of the big things for me learning to love myself is that one of the best practices that I'd ever seen done that helped me a lot was understanding. I wrote down all the things prior to an age group of when I started to realize that I didn't like my own company. And so I wrote down all the things that I'd achieved up until that moment on a bit of paper, and then I flipped it over on the other side and I wrote, ever since I've felt like I don't love my own company and I rely heavily on others, what have I achieved? And so to be able to sit there and recognize that we've been able to create and do a lot of great things in our lives in that time span while we do feel like that. So it's giving you permission to understand that it's okay to feel like that, but to know that you've created a lot of great stuff for yourself and for other people in that time frame. So, you know, a lot of self-reflection, a lot of journaling. Like every night I'm trying to understand myself a little bit more. I think it's still an ongoing process to massage them emotional muscles up here. So, you know, I write down the good, the bad, and the ugly from every day. And that, for me, it's just, what did I like about the day so I can carry it through to the next day? And these are the things that you start to develop that self-love and self-worth for yourself, and to understand that your time by yourself is where you do a lot of growth and a lot of learning. So I guess the other one for me is community. While you are by yourself, it's about surrounding yourself with 5 of the most important people, and you are as good as the 5 people that you surround yourself with. So these people need to reaffirm who you are when you're not with them, and they need to be your biggest cheerleaders. So these things are really big and important for me on my self-worth journey, and to find that place of stillness where I can just be myself and not need anyone else to be there with me or to give me a sense of meaning and purpose.
Yeah, great answers, guys. Thank you for that. Definitely helps me out a lot. Like I love the banter that goes with my friendship group. But at the end of the day, you're born into this world by yourself, and you leave on your own, as sad as that is. So you've got to really own your own happiness. You can't rely on others. And that's a growth area for me. And thank you for sharing, guys. It means a lot. Anything else? Like I know both of you guys, Mindful Oz and Mindfulness Matters, are open for business, and I'm sure you'll be happy to see people if they need it. But is there any sort of outlets that you recommend seeing if you are struggling? If the old +5, -5 mental health scale, if you are drifting in the negatives, and for whatever reason, whether it be financial, relationship, whatever, has there ever been a service that you guys could recommend as well, other than your own?
I think for me, obviously, it depends on kind of where you're at on that scale of what kind of level of support you need. So whether that's, going and seeing a counsellor or a psychologist, if that's the kind of thing you feel like you need, and you might not necessarily be in a dire level, but you still might go, but speaking to a counsellor sounds like a good idea, just to have someone to spitball how you're feeling. Or otherwise, like somewhere like Lifeline, calling them up and just having a chat to them about how you're feeling. That's obviously what they're there for, and it's perfect in this situation. But also not underestimating having a chat to your family and friends, or those like 5 important people to you, about how you're feeling, because often how we feel we keep to ourselves and we don't share because we feel like we're the only person that feels that way. And when we speak to someone else, we're often surprised with how other people are feeling the same things we are. So even just not underestimating chatting to other people that, you know, are in your life and are important to you. And I think just from like a lesser level, just some like apps to help keep you accountable. So I'm a bit of an app girl. So whether that's, you know, like Beyond Blue apps, or Smiling Mind is another really good one. And I just started using the Bloom app. So, you know, the last 2 were obviously about, you know, a bit of like meditation and mindfulness and things like that, which, you know, I think people get the idea that Matt and I, because of the work we do, that we're perfect and we've never had any issues and never not liked ourselves, or we've always been good at journaling and meditation. And the reality is, like, I used to suck at meditation. I used to fall asleep and think it was so boring. And, you know, it's the reason I've gotten better at it and it's helped me so much is because I practice. So I think you just need to figure out what works for you. And if it doesn't work for you right now, that's okay. If journaling and meditation doesn't work for you if you try it, that's okay. You can keep trying or come back to it another time, because you might be like me and it takes you 2 years to learn how to meditate. So that's okay.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that self-discipline, I guess. As Tay said, the journey continues for both of us, and I mean, we're not superhuman by no stretch of the imagination. And like I said, I struggled towards the end of the last lockdown. So yeah, I think reflection through that period helps me identify where I went wrong, and it'd be a waste to struggle like that and to not be able to take the learnings forward with you. So it's about understanding what I did last time, and did it work? No. Well, let's not take it back into the next one. What am I going to change up? So as I said, everything's an action signal for change. But I guess if you're, as we said, on that spectrum at the moment of 0 to 5 being mentally healthy and then struggling with poor mental health, I think, you know, there's a lot of great at the very base level. I think a lot of people get a lot of inspiration out of good advocacy community groups on Facebook and social media. There's a lot of really good ones these days. There's online support groups. You know, your podcasts, you know, maybe it's not being around anyone or getting any emotion up off your chest. Maybe sometimes it's just hearing something that inspires you to shift the way you are and to get that flow and movement back in your life. So, you know, all these things are really good tools, and they're there in COVID and out of COVID that help us out. But we've got access to that from our phones all the time. And by all means, if you ever need any of those, we've got some great apps that we can share with everyone. We're also big on the teletherapy. I mean, Mindful Hub is one that we work with at Mindful Oz, and there's also Listen Health, which are 2 online therapy platforms that from the comfort of your home. So by all means, use what's available to you, and know that Australia has some of the best organisations, advocacy and support groups in the world. And so by all means, know where they are and how to find them and access them if you need to. There's no weakness in that, that's for sure.
Awesome, guys. No, thank you very much. Just before we do wrap up, we want to keep this short and sweet. And like I might have said at the start, I do have the tendency of waffling on, and I want to keep this short and sharp before Friday night footy. Is there any other tips or advice you can give to someone who may be struggling? I know we just touched on that there, but you guys have got a wealth of knowledge, and it's hard to put it into 15 minutes each. But yeah, anything else that may have been left unsaid that you'd like to share?
I might just chime in. Sorry, Tay.
No,
yeah,
go for it. That's fine.
I just think whatever you are going through right now, just know that it's crafting you into the person that you're meant to become. As hard, as uncomfortable, as difficult, as challenging as it is, know that it's growth points. It's all adding up to something more beautiful on the other side. So just hang in there, hang tough, grit the teeth, but also remember to be gentle during this time. And as we said at the start, just give you permission to be, whatever that be is and looks like. That's okay, as long as we don't string it consistently together. So understand that everything that's happening to you is carving you into the person that you're meant to become. And yeah, it's a very beautiful thing on the other side of this for everyone.
Well said.
I think my last little tips would be just, yeah, as Maddie said, like don't be too hard on yourself with how you're feeling, because everyone's struggling with some aspect of this situation, and that's okay, and it's okay to feel how you're feeling, but yeah, just not let yourself kind of wallow in how you're feeling. So set a bit of an expectation on yourself that, you know, you can do better than just survive COVID and survive lockdown. So I think that's a bit of a thing, is people have this mindset of, I just want to get through each day and survive. And yes, that's great. And it's great to survive, but wouldn't it also be great if we could, you know, achieve some really awesome things in this time? So, you know, have that expectation on yourself to, you know, push yourself outside of your comfort zone a little bit, and just try new things. And whether that's, you know, meditating or reading a guide, learning to journal, or teaching yourself something new, yeah, just give it a go and see how it goes. Just, yeah.
100%. You
my
can always
advice.
go back into survival mode, but it won't hurt anyone to try and go into fight mode. And fight mode, when we get into that mode, we can really achieve some things that we didn't think were possible. So you can always retreat and go back to comfort. But yeah, what a time to another great opportunity, take two, to achieve some things and do some things that we've never had the opportunity to do, or maybe some more time on our hands to achieve some things, or to reach out to some people that we sometimes put on the back burner or ignore. So what a time to connect.
Perfect, guys. We'll leave it there, and I really appreciate your time. I know how busy you are, and unfortunately and fortunately for you, it's been a really busy time. However, hopefully this can give people the inspiration to look at themselves a little bit, and to do what's best for them moving forward, and the people around them as well. So thanks, Maddie. I look forward to connecting after this lockdown, mate. And Tay, I'll see you in about 3 minutes.
Thanks for all the work you do.
No
I appreciate
worries.
you both.
See you guys. Thank you.
Appreciate
Bye.
you too, buddy. Bye.
Who's your game changer?